Hey everybody, today I'm going to take some cuttings off of my elephant tree. And I acquired this tree in August of 2023. And I immediately took some cuttings. And I got zero success, not one. So then in August of 2024, I did it again. And I got the same results. Zero. Not one single cutting rooted. And this is a succulent. So I was treating the cuttings like succulents, but you know what? I don't think that they need to be treated like succulents. So I'm going to totally change my tack this time. First of all, I'm going to take the cuttings much earlier in the season. It's only the first week of June. And secondly, I'm going to keep the cutting media much more moist than I did in the past. And I've begun a little experiment, and I'm having great success with it. And that is using a plastic tray on the bottom of the pot with the rooting media in it, so that when they get watered, the water pools in this tray, and it's about a half an inch, a centimeter high, and then that water can wick back up into the perlite. And I've had great success with that this year. First time I really tried it, and I have now done it on numerous cuttings, and it's worked pretty well. So I'm going to try it again on these guys. And if we stand back, we see this tree is quite tall. And I'm going to take the cuttings in sort of a triangular pattern. Not really all that concerned. About the actual finished shape of the parent tree, but I am going to try to make it more of a triangular shape like a typical bonsai. I'm planning on shortening this tree a lot, but not today. So today I'm just going to start at the top, which you may not even see, and it doesn't really even matter. It's the same process. Taking cuttings is not unique to bonsai, obviously. So here's my first cutting. And I've also been taking the cambium and scraping it with my thumb. Taking the bark and scraping it with my thumb, so more of the cambium is exposed. You can see that nice bright green. Then I'm going to stick it in some water, and I'm going to do that with every cutting that I take. Now this one is interesting because it has a little bit of an older nub, and it's almost impossible to look at this tree and try to pick out half-hard wood. I've spoken about half-hard wood before. So like on an azalea that I just did the other day, the brand new growth is bright green. And then as it matures, the wood turns brown. And right where it's transitioning from green to brown is the half-hard wood, and that's the best place to take cuttings. However, this tree has gray bark, and it's gray from the very beginning. I mean, this is brand new growth, and it's already gray. So trying to find half-hard wood visually is impossible. And I have my rooting tray is a 10-inch bulb pan. And as you can see, I'm taking cuttings that are pretty long. So they will actually go all the way down to the bottom of the container. So they can wick that water up. Because, hey, it's worth a try. I mean, I've done it, first of all, in August with zero luck. And then secondly, trying to keep them, on a little bit on the dry side with zero luck. So, do something different. Change your tack, man. So that's what I'm doing. Here's an interesting branch shooting straight down. And there's another one right there. So those are all perfect subjects for cuttings. And the soaking part probably really doesn't need to be done, but I'm doing it anyway. And I'm also stripping the lower leaves, even though this thing has very strange little leaves. It's kind of a compound leaf, but the leaf is quite small. And we'll just see what happens. I went online, and started looking at some other videos, YouTube videos of people propagating these puppies. And a lot of them were taking root cuttings, okay? So I repotted this guy this spring. And so I took root cuttings from the roots that I cut off of this guy, and guess what success rate I had? That's right, 0. So I'm like, come on. It's a conspiracy. But most of what I'm doing here is just empirical, right? You try it, and you do it, and you see what happens. And you say, oh, that worked pretty well. Or, that wasn't great. So once again, cuttings in August, keeping them dry, 0%. So do something different. I make the joke that I use the baseball rule. And of course, baseball has a lot of rules. But by far the most important one is 3 strikes and you're out. So, I've already had failure twice. Or, like Thomas Edison was quoted, and I don't know if this is urban legend, but someone asked him, how did you continue on? And what I'm doing off camera is just scraping the cambium. How did you go on? Because he tried 400 different filaments before he finally found one that would actually be commercially viable. And there's an interesting trivia question for you. A lot of people say, who invented the light bulb? And everybody says, Thomas Edison. But he didn't invent the light bulb. There were numerous other light bulbs not on the market, but that people had invented before Edison. They just weren't commercially viable. So Thomas Edison invented the first light bulb that you could actually buy that would last a certain length of time in your home. Anyway, they said, how did you keep going with so many failures? And he said, I never failed. I succeeded in finding out what didn't work. So, I'm succeeding in finding out what doesn't work quite well, actually, at this point. And some of these guys are a little thinner, some are a little thicker. Like I said, it's virtually impossible to try to get half-hard wood because you can't see it. I suppose you could look at, like, this was cut here. Then we were assuming that this is fresh wood and anything behind the cut is much older. But as far as visually being able to see the transition from the new wood to the darker, older wood on this tree is impossible. And I'm not sure, I talked to another person the other day about taking cuttings of an entirely different tree. We were talking about the miniature dwarf podocarpus. And I said, how do you take cuttings? And he just said, it's just a numbers game. Just take as many cuttings as you can, stick them in the dirt. The ones that root, and the ones that don't. And it's like, okay, well, that's interesting philosophy. And I suppose it's as good a way as any if you've got the numbers to do that. And since I've repotted this guy, it has grown beautifully. If elongation of branches is beautifully, it certainly isn't beautiful as far as a tree. But I haven't been worried about that. I haven't been worried about that at all. I just want stem elongation so I can take the cuttings. So styling this tree is way down on my priority list. So here's another interesting branch. Do we see this branch? No, there's actually two of them. See this branch? It's shooting straight back. So that's a perfect subject to be removed. And, once again, just doing the same thing over and over. I've become a believer in scraping the cambium. It just makes sense that it gives the roots more surface area to form. Of course, if I was truly scientific, I'd take one batch. Maybe I'll do a short guy. Just see what happens with him. I do one batch where I scrape the cambium like this, and then I do another batch where I didn't, and then see if there's any differences. But I doubt if I'll be doing any peer-reviewed papers on propagation of elephant plants. That seems like a pretty good amount. And I have them in water just to keep them wet. And I also like to have the end wet when I put it into the rooting hormone, because it's just sticks better. So that's the next stage. The tree itself has changed a little. It's not as wild, not as rangy, especially on top. I still do have this very long branch here, but this is a very woody branch. So should I take that off too, just to see if that will root, being that old? Why not? Where is that puppy? This guy right here, right? Yeah. So we'll take him. And then I've got another branch here that I can bring like that, and it will actually even create taper. Although it probably needs to be chopped way back here like this little guy. But so we're going to take it somewhere in there. And it's quite a bit thicker. Although these guys don't get super thick buttress trunks. This is pretty much how they grow. Almost every single one I've ever seen has just really weird roots. And there's a part of me that wants to just bury it to here and get rid of all of that. But in the root pruning and repotting video that I made of this tree, I talked about how I wasn't happy with how ugly the roots are. And people said, no, keep them, keep them. So far, that's what I've done. And, you know, go look online. Virtually every single one that I've ever seen has a funky root system. That's just plain ugly, as far as I can tell, but okay. As I've got the camera pointing up to the sky. Alright, so then the next step is just simply sticking the cuttings into the pot with some rooting hormone. And the rooting hormone that I have is nothing special. It's just, 0.01% of indole butyric acid. Basically just rooting hormone. Oh, look at that. I picked the thick one first. So I'm going to put him right in the middle. And that is one, I don't know, issue, I guess you could call it. That when you put them in a container like this where they're soaking, is you can end up pulling out multiple ones together. I don't think that's of any major consequence. This one's a little smaller, so I'm going to stick it on the side. You see, they just all want to come together. And I don't think it's that much of a biggie. It's no biggie. Sometimes I wonder if I shouldn't be taking more leaves off. This tree is just so new to me, you know, it's like, what do you do? And a huge part of doing this, one of my goals, if I can get these guys to root, is to manipulate the roots so they don't look like this. I don't want them looking like that. I mean, I want nice roots that behave. So we shall have to see if they do root, how. I think I'm going to take that guy and cut him off. I'll make him another cutting. Why not? Yeah, look at all that nice green cambium. Beautiful. Now I'm obscuring where I'm at here. take off more leaves. And another thing is, you may be thinking, why are these cuttings so long? Some of them are 10 inches, maybe even a foot long. I don't know. Typically when I take cuttings, they're usually 3 or 4 inches, maybe 6, but never this long. So maybe that was also part of the problem. Is the cuttings were too long and they just demanded too much water. And like I said, I tried to keep them on the dry side because I'm thinking it's succulent. So, life is all one gigantic experiment. And my bonsai journey is no different. Now there's the one with the stub. Now remember which one this is so we can figure out if it rooted. Alright, it's like right there. It's that one. Oh look, I've pulled all the rest of them out with that. Not like 2 or 3 seconds out of the water is going to change anything. This is interesting. This is the bottom, but I also scraped the top because I lost track of where I was. Because if you look at the leaves on this guy, it's pretty hard to tell. Is that up or is that up? Anyway, probably will be of no consequence to the cutting rooting. And just for the sake of efficiency, I usually like to fill up the rooting tray with cuttings. I don't want like just empty space, especially if the tree has the ability to give you more. Fill it up. And I could have probably put these much closer together and really filled it up, but I think this is good for now. So the size of these cuttings is not different from when I did it. What happened to the top? There it is. When I did it in August of 23 and 24, I took long cuttings just like this. So is there room for a few more? Probably. Let's do a few more. And then the aftercare is, once again, I'm changing my tack on these guys, is to keep them very moist. Keep them almost wet. Once this tray fills with water, so it can wick up to the bottom of the cuttings, keep it filled the whole time. That's my plan. Is to just keep that water in there filled the whole time. And so what I do is I water from above. I don't have any kind of mist system or nothing high tech to root cutting. So I'm just basically putting them in a protected spot and then just watering them with a hose the same way I water everything with a hose. So I'm certainly not high tech. I remember the wholesale grower that I used to buy from, he's since decided to retire, so he closed down, which I lamented because I could get some really nice material at wholesale prices. You know, back in the day, $4 or $5. For actually all of the junipers that I have were $4.50, I think. So very, very inexpensive. But he had a huge, sophisticated fog system that was like state of the art. Of course, he was running 20 acres worth of plants and attempting to propagate most of them himself. So there you go. So remember the date. And so what happened in the last 2 years when I did this was they looked okay, and they looked okay, and then they looked okay. And then like within a day or two, all the leaves turned brown and fell off. And I thought, well, you know, just keep it, see what happens. But I really think that at that point, when the leaves turned brown and they fell off, that was it. They were dead. So I'm hoping. Now some of these guys have brand new growth. That one there has brand new growth. This one here has brand new growth. Because when you're doing cuttings, that is really the single most important sign that you have roots that have formed, is that you have brand new growth. Now these already have brand new growth, so you know it's a little tricky. Some don't though, so that's by far the best sign that you've got new roots is new growth, because those roots are beginning, however slightly, because perlite is a fairly inert substance. Those new roots are bringing nutrients up to the cutting, and you start to get new growth. And there are times, many times actually, when I see that, and without taking the cuttings out of the tray, I will actually fertilize just a tiny little bit, just a touch of fertilizer. Because those brand new tender roots, you don't want to burn them. So there we go. Fingers crossed, everybody. On 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Do both hands. Both hands. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Yeah, if it was only that easy, right? You will root. And the tree now looks like more of a tree. We got rid of a lot of the rangy stuff. And I'm thinking of taking it down to here. Actually, here, let me put the tripod legs together so I can lift it up better. Right here. So imagine all this gone. So now if we come back and we imagine all that gone, I think the tree will have better taper. And if you look critically at it, it has reverse taper right as it hits the roots, but the roots are just so thick and ugly that it's really probably not that big of a deal. So I was going to say elephant skin. Elephant tree. I guess it could be called elephant skin tree. That was more descriptive. And we'll see what happens with the cuttings. Either 3rd time's a charm or 3 strikes and you are out. Although I have the feeling that I'm going to be so pig-headed about this that I will probably continue to try to take cuttings until I finally get some success. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you like this video, the old thumbs up thingy. If you haven't subscribed already and you're curious, will these cuttings root? You can hit the notification bell, and next time I drop a video showing you whether they've rooted or not, you can watch that and leave a comment. Anybody else got any one of these? I went to a show, a display, and there was one of these, but it was much shorter. Well, it looked like a bonsai versus just this wild and rangy thing. But that was on purpose, to take the cuttings. So thank you so much for watching. and I will see you in the next installment.